Jeffrey Epstein case came and went. There are files, there are no files, there are names, there are no names, there's a client list, there isn't a client list, Prince Andrew's name, Prince Andrew's not named.
The monarchy faced its greatest moral test with Prince Andrew. But what if that was a diversion? A secret ledger, allegedly penned by Ghislaine Maxwell, now presents the Crown with an impossible choice: expose the Duchess of Sussex's hidden past and destroy Prince Harry, or bury the truth and risk the institution crumbling from within. Hello, everyone. What I'm about to share with you today is not a story of celebrity gossip. It is a matter of grave institutional importance, a narrative of deception that reaches into the very heart of the British monarchy. Just hours ago, information surfaced from the controlled environment of a federal correctional facility in Tallahassee, Florida, information that has sent absolute shockwaves through the carefully constructed world of the California branch. As Meghan Markle curates her lifestyle brand from her Montecito estate, projecting an image of serene authenticity, a document has emerged that threatens to expose the very foundations of her narrative as a catastrophic fraud. We are not talking about rumors or tabloid speculation. We are talking about a meticulously detailed record, allegedly penned by the hand of Ghislaine Maxwell, which sources connected to the Epstein investigation claim constitutes a direct threat to the Sussex enterprise. According to these high-level sources, this is not merely a diary. It is a ledger of influence, a chronicle of connections kept as an insurance policy. And within its pages, a name allegedly appears with chilling regularity: Meghan Markle. The story being told is not one of a chance encounter, but of a systematic and prolonged association during her pre-royal years. As the Duchess launches cooking shows and speaks of new beginnings, this ghost from a past she sought to erase is reportedly preparing to make its public debut. The silence from the Sussex PR apparatus is, for once, not a sign of control, but of a terrifying predicament. They understand that what is contained within these pages is not something that can be spun or managed. It is a potential verdict. This historic revelation marks the end of the fairy tale monarchy she attempted to construct, exposing a profound dysfunction that has been allowed to fester at the expense of the Crown's integrity. The Montecito mirage is about to be shattered by a constitutional storm, and the institution must now reckon with the consequences of an infiltration it failed to prevent. The atmosphere inside the Sussex residence reportedly resembles a siege, a desperate sprint against time as they attempt to formulate a response to an unthinkable outcome. But this merely scratches the surface. The documents allegedly contain details so specific, so damning, that they threaten not just a public image, but the very legality of her position and the titles granted to her children. What we are witnessing is not merely a scandal, but a fundamental restructuring of royal family dynamics, initiated not from within the palace walls, but from a prison cell holding the secrets of the world's most corrupt elite. The impending catastrophe is real, and the judgment of public opinion will be swift and unforgiving. The Crown is not a gift, it is a contract. So too, in the world of transactional power inhabited by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, was loyalty. According to sources with deep connections to the federal case, what has surfaced is not the emotional rambling of a prison diary, but something far more clinical and dangerous: a ledger. Picture the cold precision of a corporate audit. Maxwell, a woman who managed Epstein's global network for decades, allegedly documented names, dates, flight manifests, and financial flows with the dispassionate accuracy of a chief financial officer. This was her leverage, her protection against the powerful figures she serviced. Now, facing a 20-year sentence, that insurance policy is reportedly being cashed in. Sources claim the ledger details a network of individuals categorized by their role, their utility, and their vulnerabilities. The document purportedly contains sections on politicians, financiers, and, most explosively, social facilitators, individuals who help maintain the illusion of legitimacy. It is within this section, sources allege, that the name Rachel Meghan Markle is found. The entries are not vague, They are said to be forensic in their detail, linking specific dates to known movements of Epstein's private aircraft and events held at his various properties, including the notorious Little St. James Island. This is the part no one expected: the existence of a systematic record, a piece of evidence that could transform years of whispers into a prosecutorial case in the court of public opinion. Maxwell, the master manipulator, understood that information, when properly documented, is the ultimate form of power. Her ledger is not a confession. It is a weapon, a methodical dismantling of the carefully constructed images of those she now considers hostile parties. The fact that this document exists suggests a level of premeditation that is chilling. It proves that Maxwell was never just an accomplice. She was the chief executive of a clandestine organization, and like any CEO, she kept meticulous records of her assets and liabilities. The emergence of this ledger is a commercial and social termination notice for the Sussex enterprise, a signal that the game of attrition has begun. The contents are not just embarrassing anecdotes. They are described as a predetermined legal framework outlining a pattern of behavior that could be interpreted as a substantial breach of the duties expected of anyone associated with the British Crown. The financial implications are just as severe, threatening to unravel the very infrastructure of their post-royal independence. Let that sink in. A document held under lock and key now threatens to trigger a liquidity crisis for the California branch, proving that in the world of high-stakes power, no secret is ever truly buried. Let's be surgically precise. The allegation circulating among channels connected to the ongoing legal battles is not a singular mistake or a youthful indiscretion. The Maxwell ledger, according to what I have been told by sources who have been tracking this for months, documents 12 separate and distinct visits by Meghan Markle to Jeffrey Epstein's private Caribbean island, Little St. James. 12. Let that sink in. The timeline of these alleged entries spans from approximately 2001 to 2013, a period that aligns perfectly with her years as a struggling actress in Hollywood long before she met Prince Harry. This was the era of bit parts, briefcase modeling on Deal or No Deal, and a relentless ambition that was not yet matched by professional success. The ledger, sources claim, outlines a pattern of systematic engagement, not a random vacation. It suggests a relationship that provided access to a world of immense wealth and power at a time when her public profile was negligible. Consider the implications. This isn't about being in the wrong place at the wrong time. 12 visits suggest a knowing and willing participant in a social ecosystem we now know was built on exploitation and corruption. Each entry in the ledger is a nail in the coffin of the carefully constructed narrative she presented to the royal family and to the world. It paints a picture not of a naive newcomer to elite circles, but of a seasoned operator who understood the transactional nature of power long before she ever set foot in Buckingham Palace. The timeline is absolutely explosive because it contradicts the approved version of her story completely. While she was publicly described as hustling for auditions, these entries suggest she was maintaining parallel social system, engaging in covert communications and hidden activities that funded a lifestyle far beyond her declared means. This was not a side story. This was her main enterprise. The frequency of the visits, as documented, transforms the narrative from one of ambition to one of complicity. This systematic presence on the island represents a fundamental deception, a calculated erasure of a past that, if known, would have made her marriage into the British monarchy an unthinkable outcome. The fairy tale that Meghan presented to the world already contained fractures, but this, a documented pattern of association with one of the most corrupt networks in modern history, shatters it completely. To understand what is happening, one must abandon the idea of simple revenge. Ghislaine Maxwell is not acting out of emotion. This is institutional management of her own dire circumstances. Facing 2 decades in federal prison, she is engaged in a clinical game of attrition, and her primary asset is the information contained within her ledger. The oldest currency in the justice system is leverage. You trade what you know for what you want, better conditions, a reduced sentence, protection. Prison records, which are a matter of public knowledge, show that Maxwell has been preparing appeals and engaging in legal strategies since her conviction. Her meetings with high-level Justice Department officials during the previous administration were not social calls, they were negotiations. And according to sources connected to the Crown's legal representatives who have been monitoring the situation, the potential release of names like Meghan Markle's is a masterful exercise of soft power. Each leak, each whisper about what the ledger contains, is a strategic move designed to remind powerful people on the outside of what she possesses. It serves as a warning. Either provide support for her appeals or face the consequences of exposure. The inclusion of a globally recognized figure like the Duchess of Sussex is particularly potent. It demonstrates the reach of Maxwell's network and the potential for catastrophic public relations damage, making her a figure that powerful entities cannot simply ignore. She is not just a prisoner. She is the chief executive of a bankrupt organization liquidating its most toxic and valuable assets. This is a financial siege conducted from behind bars. Maxwell is methodically raising the stakes, forcing those who thought they had escaped her orbit to confront a new reality. Her actions are not chaotic, they are surgically precise. The timing of these leaks is designed for maximum impact, coinciding with Meghan's own media ventures to create a direct and devastating counter-narrative. Consider the implications. Maxwell is demonstrating that she still controls the board. While the Sussexes operate their PR apparatus in California, Maxwell operates a far more powerful one from her cell, capable of undermining their entire global brand with a single, well-placed piece of information. This is not a desperate plea for help. It is a hostile acquisition of the public narrative, and Rachel Meghan Markle is the primary target. A fundamental question shatters the entire Sussex narrative. How does a cable TV actress with no significant financial means of her own make 12 separate trips to one of the most exclusive and secretive private islands on the planet? You do not book a commercial flight to Little St. James. You are brought there. You are flown on private jets. Your presence facilitated by a trusted insider. The logistics alone point to the existence of a powerful benefactor, a connector who deemed her a worthy addition to Epstein's curated gatherings. This is where the story pivots from personal history to a covert operation. The trips would have required a level of financial and social sponsorship far beyond Meghan's reach at the time. This points to a deliberate and calculated introduction into Epstein's inner circle. Someone had to vouch for her to bring her into the fold. This individual would have been a key gatekeeper, someone whose job it was to identify ambitious individuals who understood the unspoken rules of these elite networks. The existence of a facilitator is not just a theory, it is a logistical necessity. The 12 alleged visits are evidence of a structured relationship, one where Meghan was not a peer of the billionaires and princes she was meeting, but an asset brought in by a manager. Finding this facilitator is the key to unlocking the entire deception, a deception that was not just personal, but strategic. This was not about networking for acting roles. This was about securing the financial infrastructure for a post-Hollywood life, long before such a life was publicly contemplated. The facilitator was, in essence, an investment manager, and Meghan Markle was the portfolio. The resources required for such repeated travel, the private airfare, the security clearance, the seamless integration into high-stakes social events, point to a level of operational planning that is corporate in its nature. This wasn't a series of social invitations. It was a scheduled deployment. The trips represent a significant financial investment from an unknown party, raising the unavoidable question, what was the expected return on that investment? The entire narrative of a self-made woman who struggled against the odds is fundamentally dishonest if, behind the scenes, a powerful and corrupt apparatus was underwriting her entire existence. This facilitator is the missing link, the ghost in the machine of her meteoric rise. The worlds are closing in on Rachel Meghan Markle because the name of the facilitator is no longer a secret among those investigating these circles. Kirby Summers, the unauthorized biographer of Ghislaine Maxwell, pointed directly to one man, Marcus Anderson, the global membership director of Soho House. This is not a random connection. Anderson is the man who undisputedly introduced Meghan to Prince Harry. He is the central node in her social network. But what if his role was not merely a friendly matchmaker? What if Soho House, under his direction, operated as a sophisticated networking machine, a recruitment apparatus for ambitious individuals to gain access to circles of wealth and power? Consider its function. A private, members-only club where introductions are made and deals are struck away from public scrutiny. Anderson's job is to curate this environment. Sources suggest his connections extended deep into the overlapping worlds of international finance, entertainment, and, allegedly, the darker networks of Epstein and Maxwell. If Anderson identified Meghan as a promising but unconnected actress and provided her with an entry point into this world, it explains everything. It explains the 12 island visits. It explains her sudden, seemingly miraculous social ascent. She was not just lucky. She was strategically placed by a master networker who understood her potential utility within these exclusive and profoundly corrupt ecosystems. The path to a prince, it seems, was paved with introductions far more sinister than the public was ever led to believe. This reframes Soho House not as a luxury brand, but as an apparatus of influence, a key piece of infrastructure in a global game of power. Anderson's role transforms from a socialite to a strategic asset manager, identifying and cultivating individuals for placement within networks that require a specific profile, ambitious, discreet, and willing to operate within a transactional framework. The timeline aligns perfectly. As Meghan's presence at Soho House events increased, so too did her alleged travels to exclusive private locations. It suggests a direct correlation between her integration into Anderson's network and her access to the Epstein world. This connection is not just a missing link, it is the entire chain of command, explaining how a C-list actress was granted access to an A-list conspiracy. The narrative she sold of a chance meeting with a prince was, in fact, the culmination of a multi-year strategic operation. Documents can be disputed, memories can be questioned, but photographs are a different kind of evidence. They are a verdict. And according to reports circulating with increasing intensity, Maxwell's ledger is not just text. It is accompanied by images, actual photographs, sources claim, that show Meghan Markle on Little St. James at yacht parties and in social settings that would be impossible to explain away as innocent networking. We know from court testimony that Epstein's properties were wired for surveillance. Cameras were everywhere. Documentation was a form of control, of blackmail. The idea that a comprehensive visual record exists is not far-fetched. It is the established modus operandi of the Epstein network. But photos of Meghan Markle specifically, sources claim they are part of Maxwell's insurance file clear images where her identity is undeniable, placing her at island gatherings with Epstein, Maxwell, and other high-profile individuals. These are not the grainy, ambiguous yacht girl photos that have circulated for years. These are described as clear, contextual evidence, the kind of photos that would shatter her carefully constructed image as a naive victim of elite corruption. They would prove she was not a stranger to that world, but a participant. For a woman who has built a global brand on controlling her own narrative, an irrefutable photograph would be a commercial and social termination notice. It would be the end of the fairy tale monarchy she sought to build in California. But it gets worse. The sources indicate that these images are not just social snapshots. They allegedly depict situations that would confirm the nature of the island's activities. making anyone present not just a guest, but a witness, or worse. The existence of such photographs explains the desperate silence from the Montecito compound. A photograph cannot be dismissed with a PR statement. It cannot be spun. It is a permanent record of a choice, a moment in time that cannot be erased. And somewhere in California at this moment, Megan knows this is approaching. She knows that Maxwell's collection of digital ghosts could rise at any moment, rendering every interview she has ever given and every speech she has ever made about empowerment a grotesque and calculated lie. That represents the experience of someone waiting for the past to catch up. Meghan Markle has built a career on aggressive litigation. She sued British tabloids over the publication of a private letter to her father. She has engaged lawyers to fight stories about everything from home renovations to her relationship with the Princess of Wales. Her image is protected by a fortress of cease and desist letters and the constant threat of legal action. Yet, on the single most damaging allegation of her life, a connection to a convicted pedophile's criminal network, there has been only radio silence. Why? The answer is not weakness. It is a calculated legal strategy that speaks volumes. To file a defamation lawsuit against these claims would be to open the door to the legal process of discovery. This means lawyers for the opposing side would gain the right to subpoena travel records, flight manifests, private emails, and financial statements from that 2001 to 2013 period. It would mean depositions under oath, where lying constitutes the crime of perjury. If a single piece of evidence exists that places her on that island, even once, a lawsuit would not only fail, but it would result in her own criminal prosecution. Therefore, silence becomes the only viable option. It is a tacit admission that fighting the claim is more dangerous than allowing it to circulate. People do not ignore accusations of this magnitude unless challenging them creates larger problems. Her silence is not a sign of dignity. It is the strategic choice of someone who cannot risk having her past formally investigated under penalty of law. This legal fortress of silence is the most powerful evidence of all. It is a strategic decision born of the knowledge that the paper trail is real. An innocent person, particularly one with the financial resources and legal teams at her disposal, would move to immediately quash such reputation-destroying claims. They would welcome the discovery process as an opportunity for vindication. But a guilty party understands that the courtroom is not a PR venue, it is a forum where evidence is presented and cross-examined. The risk of a single flight log or a credit card statement surfacing is too great. The fact that Meghan has not issued denials or filed defamation lawsuits is noteworthy. Her silence speaks volumes. And what it says is that the past, as allegedly recorded by Ghislaine Maxwell, is both real and indefensible. This is not speculation. This is a matter of public record. In 2021, David Boies, the high-profile attorney representing Epstein victim Virginia Giuffre, publicly stated his intention to depose Meghan Markle as a witness in the civil case against Prince Andrew. Let that sink in. A veteran lawyer with access to the Epstein investigation's sealed documents and witness testimony identified the Duchess of Sussex as a person with relevant knowledge of Prince Andrew's activities. He described her as a close associate of Andrew's during the relevant period. This was not a media stunt. It was a formal legal strategy. Boies was building a case and believed Meghan held a piece of the puzzle. What was her response to this direct legal assault, this public linking of her name to the Epstein-Andrew nexus? Nothing. No demand for a retraction, no lawsuit against Boies for defamation. The claim was simply allowed to stand. This was a critical moment that was largely overlooked. An officer of the court, a man prosecuting a case against a senior royal, effectively named her as a material witness, implying she moved in the same circles and had knowledge of what transpired. Her failure to challenge this, combined with her broader silence on the Maxwell ledger, forms a pattern. It is the behavior of someone who knows that any legal entanglement will lead to the unraveling of a carefully concealed history. The boy's gambit was a direct challenge, a shot across the bow, and it was met with strategic evasion. This was not how an innocent person wrongly implicated in one of the century's most vile scandals would behave. An innocent person would leverage such a moment to clear their name, to express outrage, to distance themselves unequivocally from the accused. Meghan's silence was a concession. It signaled to those watching closely that the risk of a deposition, of being questioned under oath about her past associations with Prince Andrew, was a risk she was unwilling to take. Boys knew something. He wouldn't have publicly named a member of the British royal family without having a basis for it, and her lack of a forceful public and legal response is perhaps the most damning indictment of all. It suggests that the truth of her connection to that world is so indefensible that even the most aggressive PR and legal teams must stand down. The implications of these allegations extend far beyond a personal scandal. They represent a potential catastrophic failure of institutional security at the highest level. The royal family vets individuals who marry into the line of succession. Background checks are conducted. Past relationships and associations are scrutinized to protect the crown from blackmail, foreign influence, and reputational damage. So, we are left with two unthinkable outcomes. The first is that Meghan Markle, a woman with an alleged history of 12 visits to the private island of a known predator, successfully deceived the entire security apparatus of the British monarchy. This would suggest a level of operational sophistication and deception that is staggering, framing her not as a bride, but as a hostile actor who successfully infiltrated the institution. The second possibility is even more chilling, that elements within the establishment knew about her connections and allowed the marriage to proceed anyway. This would imply a cover-up designed to manage a crisis, a decision to contain a threat from within rather than expose it. Either scenario represents a profound threat to constitutional stability. It means a hostile party with a deeply compromised past was granted access to the sovereign, to state secrets, and to the very heart of the British establishment. This is no longer about family drama. It is a question of national security. The Windsor infiltration, if proven, would be the single greatest security breach in modern royal history. It would call into question the judgment and competence of the very people tasked with protecting the monarchy. How could a background check fail to uncover a dozen trips to one of the most notorious locations on Earth? How could the intelligence services not be aware of her association with a network that was already under scrutiny by federal agencies? These are not questions of oversight. They are questions of either gross negligence or deliberate complicity. The damage is not just reputational, it is structural. It suggests that the institution has become so vulnerable, so blinded by the desire for a positive public relations narrative, that it failed to perform its most basic duty to protect itself from hostile acquisition. The American dream she sold was, in fact, a Trojan horse, and the monarchy willingly opened the gates. Picture the gravity of such a moment. While Prince Andrew was being stripped of his titles, exiled from public life, and facing a global firestorm over his documented friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, Meghan Markle was sitting at royal family dinners. She was a participant in the very discussions about how the institution should handle the crisis. If these allegations are true, she watched a man burn for his connections to a network she herself was allegedly a part of for over a decade. This is not merely hypocrisy. It is a level of calculated deception and extreme cruelty that is difficult to comprehend. It represents a masterful exercise in narrative control, allowing one family member to become the sole focus of the Epstein scandal while her own potentially deeper involvement remained buried. She weaponized the family's crisis to advance her own narrative of victimhood, positioning herself as a reformer in an archaic institution, all while allegedly hiding a past that was infinitely more toxic than the one being publicly litigated. If the Maxwell ledger proves her connection, every sympathetic interview she gave, every claim she made about being unprotected by the monarchy is rendered a fraudulent performance. It would mean she was never the victim, She was the operator, protecting herself at the expense of her husband's family. The Andrew parallel is the most damning piece of behavioral evidence we have. She sat in rooms at Sandringham and Windsor, privy to the institution's most sensitive discussions about damage control, knowing that her own history was a ticking time bomb. This demonstrates a capacity for compartmentalization and a cold precision that is truly chilling. It suggests her entire tenure as a working royal was a counterintelligence operation designed to gather information and manage her own exposure while a parallel crisis unfolded. Her public performance of empathy and her private reality of profound deception represent a duality that is almost sociopathic. She didn't just lie by omission, she actively participated in the judgment of another for sins she allegedly shared. This wasn't a passive deception. It was an active, strategic manipulation of the highest order, executed with a level of ruthlessness that the monarchy was clearly unprepared for. For years, rumors of Meghan Markle's pre-Harry lifestyle have circulated on the internet, the so-called yacht girl allegations. These stories spoke of trips on private boats with wealthy men, of parties in Phuket, Thailand, and of connections to the very circles of power that included Epstein and Maxwell. Her supporters dismissed these as misogynistic smears. But what if they were not baseless rumors? What if they were early intelligence reports from individuals who knew the truth but lacked irrefutable proof? The emergence of the Maxwell ledger has the potential to trigger a cascade of corroboration. Suddenly, the disputed photos from the 2001 Phuket yacht party, which Prince Andrew is known to have attended, are cast in a new light. If Maxwell's ledger confirms Meghan's presence at that specific event, those grainy images become damning evidence. The vague whispers become documented facts. This is what makes Maxwell's alleged records so dangerous. They do not exist in a vacuum. They serve as the central pillar that could support years of disparate claims, uniting them into a single, coherent, and provable narrative. The internet theories are transformed into a documented history that mainstream media outlets, who once dismissed the stories, will no longer be able to ignore. The trickle of information is about to become a flood. We may see former associates, once bound by fear or non-disclosure agreements, come forward now that a central piece of documentary evidence exists. The ledger provides them with the cover and the credibility they previously lacked. Each new testimony will add another layer to the narrative of deception, creating a critical mass of evidence that is impossible to ignore. This is how major cover-ups unravel, not with a single explosion, but with a series of controlled demolitions. Maxwell's ledger is the detonator, and the resulting chain reaction will bring down the entire carefully constructed facade of the Duchess of Sussex. What was once dismissed as conspiracy will be reevaluated as early, unconfirmed intelligence that was tragically accurate. The narrative is shifting from if to when, and the cascade has already begun. The truth in the internet age has a way of emerging. Documents leak. Sources talk. And somewhere in that federal prison, Ghislaine Maxwell sits with the key to a reckoning that could annihilate the entire Sussex enterprise. If the ledger is released, if the photos surface, the consequences will be absolute. Meghan's brand, built on a carefully curated image of authenticity and compassion, collapses overnight. Netflix and other corporate partners will sever ties. The lifestyle guru is exposed as a woman who hid her association with one of modern history's most monstrous criminals. And Harry, the prince who abandoned his family, his country, and his duty for a woman he believed was a victim of the system, becomes the greatest fool in modern royal history. He will be the man who dismantled his own legacy to defend a catastrophic lie. Their empire in Montecito, built on a foundation of public relations and selective truth, will be revealed as an empire built on sand. The inevitable reckoning is not a question of if, but when. Every speech she gave about protecting children will ring hollow. Every charitable endeavor will be seen as a cynical exercise in reputation laundering. The American dream is transforming into a financial nightmare from which there is no escape. This is the brutal but necessary lesson about power and legacy. One cannot spend years attacking the very source of privilege and then act surprised when the past rises up to revoke it. The judgment now passes to the court of public opinion, but the evidence is already overwhelming. The woman who wanted to be a princess becomes just another person who thought her secrets were safely buried within the archives of the elite. But those archives are now open, and the reckoning will be televised. The only appropriate response from the institution will be to formally bar her from using any royal styling or designation, a final institutional elimination to protect what is left of its credibility. The truth of this matter will eventually emerge, and the consequences will be catastrophic for the Sussex brand. But now, the judgment passes to you, the jury of public opinion. Do you believe the silence from Montecito is a sign of a calculated legal strategy to hide guilt, or is it the dignified response of an innocent party? Cast your vote in the comments below. Type Team Ledger if you believe the Maxwell documents are real and damning. Type Team Sussex if you believe this is a fabricated smear campaign.